I'd like you to welcome you to the second county forum. This one is on the first charter amendment, which will be on the ballot on the first side. It says county and then 1, 2. And tonight is structure of government. No, that's right. It's the first question. Sorry. To assist us tonight, we have a lot of Hill Talkers, the high school speech and debate team. We have Ben Duan again, our excellent timekeeper, and we have Dakota Klasky over here, and also Sudeep Dasari, Darcy Turin, and Nate Delgado. And they'll help us when we get to the question and answer phase. So this is Kyle Wheeler, former county councilor, and she and Larry Warner were both on the first charter review committee, which worked really hard for years. So Kyle's going to explain the changes that are going to be discussed tonight, and then she and Larry will answer questions. I'll tell you about the question and answer period when we get there. So first Kyle will speak.
Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you to the League and to the Hill Talkers for doing this tonight. I want to make sure that all of you paid attention to this. You should have received it in the mail if you're a registered voter in Los Alamos County. But if you get a lot of mail like we do, it might have gotten lost into the recycle pile. So there are copies right out here. These have both of the ballot questions that you'll be seeing on your ballot in November, or if you vote early before then. These are this is the other piece of paper that has all the stuff about these questions with the strike-through language and so forth. So if you want all these details, please pick up a copy out there on the table. And also there are copies of the voter guide, which was distributed to all households in the Monitor about a week or so ago. But if you've lost that, just go ahead and pick up another copy before you leave tonight, or take one to a neighbor who maybe didn't get one. There's also copies of these things at the libraries. So I wanted to first of all just introduce to you a little bit about the Charter Review Committee. We were formed in December of 2009, and we really started our work in 2010. John Hopkins was the chair, and Larry Warner was the vice chair. I was a member that was appointed after one of the other former members left the committee, but the original members were Chris Chandler, Richard Skip Dunn, Harry Ettinger, Ralph Phelps, Maury Pomerantz, Jim Hall, Deborah Gill, Robert Pellick, and David Israelowitz were on the Charter Committee for a while. David went off when he was appointed to the council, and Deborah went off, I'm not sure what time when, but she was gone when I was appointed. So I got appointed pretty early on, and when the Charter Review Committee began its work in early 2010, we formed several subcommittees to split up sections of the charter and to begin assigning the pieces to subcommittees. The subcommittees did a lot of the background and the research and so forth, and then would present their work to the entire Charter Review Committee. And that all the work of all the Charter Review Committee was presented in the final report to Council in December 2011. Public participation was encouraged at all meetings of the Charter Review Committee, and all the meetings were well advertised. We received a lot of relevant and constructive input at meetings and via emails. The recommendations of the Charter Review Committee related to initiative and referendum process were approved by the voters in the 2012 election. The questions regarding Article 5 related to utilities were addressed at Tuesday night's forum, so we won't be talking about that tonight. Tonight I'm here to talk about the first question on the ballot, which relates to the structure of government. So, we went back and forth on a lot of things, and the Charter Review Committee did not recommend changing the form of the government because it became clear that the roles and responsibilities of the council chair and the county administrator regarding leadership duties should be clarified. Our discussions focused on the leadership roles of the council chair, and the county administrator. We stressed that the council is responsible for setting policies for the county, and the county administrator is responsible for the day-to-day operations. To that end, we propose the following. 1, the council chair should be elected annually. While this is the current practice, and it has been for quite a while, we felt it should be stated in the charter. 2, strengthen the role of the council chair as the head of government. The county needs a more visible leader, and the council chair should be that leader. The chair is the head of government for purposes of emergency law, intergovernmental relations, and ceremonial purposes. The chair should attend and preside at the meetings and shall have equal voting rights as the other council members. Supporting this question on your ballot eliminates ambiguity and strengthens visibility of the chair as the county's leader. 3, we recommended changing the name of the county administrator to the county manager. The proposed change better aligns the titles found in other New Mexico communities, and it is better understood through local governments, as the position is reflective of executive responsibilities. 4, clarify the roles, the responsibilities of the county manager. We wanted to emphasize the executive rather than administrative duties. 5, we wanted to clarify the council's authority to appoint members to boards, commissions, and ad hoc advisory committees. This change clarifies the council's role so that they will always be appointing these members, and it removes any ambiguity about this. 6, allow poll workers to serve as members of boards, commissions, and ad hoc advisory committees. A recent change in federal law requires that poll workers be employees of the county. Under existing charter language, poll workers would be excluded from serving on boards, commissions, and ad hoc committees. Because poll workers serve the county as employees for a very short period of time, this proposed change would provide an exception to the general rule and allow poll workers to be voting members of boards, commissions, and ad hoc committees. And often it is the very same people who are willing to step forward and serve as poll workers who are also willing to step forward and serve on a board or commission or an ad hoc committee. So we recommended that change also. It's a pretty straightforward question 1 on your ballot. It didn't generate the kind of controversy that question 2 has, so we don't have a con-side here, but that's my comments about question 1, and I hope you're going to vote in favor of this question. And we are ready to stand for questions, eh, Mr. Warner?
Indeed so.
Do you want to sit down?
Or maybe it depends on who answers the question. Okay.
All right, so the rule for questions is the members of the audience can raise your hand, and if I point to you, then you'll be given a mic, and you'll have 1 minute to state your question, and then Kyle and or Larry will have a total of 2 minutes to answer. So we have some questions.
Thank you. The description of the responsibilities of the county administrator or manager would be changed from responsible for the administration of all county affairs placed in his charge by state statute, this charter, county ordinance, or the council. 2, all operational requirements of the county, and shall execute the vision, strategic goals, and policies established by the council. What is the difference? I mean, it's different words, but what do you see as the substantive difference in the responsibilities of the county manager administrator? I'm not talking about the change in title, I'm talking about any differences, or are there any differences in his responsibility?
I think that's a very good question, Robert. I'll take a stab at answering it. The distinction is between administration and operational management. And to me, there's a clear distinction, although everybody in the room might not agree with that. The word administration seems to me to refer to the routine, the non-creative, if you could use that word, and not to be confused with management responsibility. Now, to be sure, that the difference between the two is not absolutely clear, so I'm perhaps not making it any better, but at least I'll continue to take a stab at it, and you can tell me where I went off the track. In the case of the operational responsibility, it comes back to the word manager, which is cited in the major introduction. And to me, that puts the administrator into a more elevated, responsible, overall position than if you were simply administrator. As I say those words, I realize that's a very weak distinction between those two words, and I hope it didn't make the matters worse. But anyway, that was the line of thinking that went through my mind anyway, to make it valid.
No, I think that's
Are you sure? I didn't think so.
Are there other questions? No questions?
No fair.
And I didn't plant this.
I don't believe that.
So the community has often raised the issue of why don't we have a mayor? Presumably you folks looked at that question, and what was the answer?
Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you asked that question because I was forbidden to raise that topic. And the reason I was forbidden to raise it when Cal and I were planning the session tonight was because it was not included under what the council sent forward in the form of a vote. But in fact, the CRC spent a lot of time. In fact, there was a forum exactly like this one. Thank you. Is that loud enough? Like this one, managed by the League of Women Voters, to look at that question. It was jammed. And the opinion, as I remember, was rather evenly decided for and against the mayor. But the committee looked at it very carefully, lots of sessions with the public presence, in addition to the one I just referred to by the League of Women Voters. And the conclusion was that for reasons which I can go into a little bit if you like, or we can talk about it afterwards, the committee decided not to recommend changing that part of the structure of government. Let's not think about having a mayor instead of the present council form of government.
I can go into some of
So please speak into the mic so everybody.
Okay, I can go into some of those reasons why we felt that it wouldn't work so well to have a mayor in this community. One was that we felt that there would be a fairly small pool of candidates to run for mayor. We thought the pay would need to be quite high in order to attract qualified candidates. That we thought the position would likely require a full-time commitment, and we couldn't really see people wanting to leave their jobs maybe at the lab or something to run for mayor. And we felt that the candidates for mayor might all end up being retired people, so they wouldn't really represent the diversity of the community.
Wait a minute.
And we'd probably still need a professional manager for the county. Those were most of the arguments against.
And there were good arguments for as well. There was certainly merit on both sides of the question, but that was the conclusion we came to.
Right.
In addition to that topic, there were a whole bunch of other topics that you may want to ask about that didn't get put on the ballot, but I won't go there because I was told I can't.
Who told you?
You did.
No, I didn't.
Are there other questions? Would you like the would you like Larry and Kyle to tell you some more about other things that were considered since it's early? Yes, sure. Okay. All right, let's not do any more timing.
That was fun.
Okay, there were a number of things we talked about, but we really beat the one about mayor versus county. Council.
working very well.
You need to get the.
Where's that other mic?
Oh, you want to use this one?
Yeah, let me use that one if you don't mind. Okay, so we spent a whole lot of time on the mayor versus the council topic. And we did the typical matrix and the pros and the cons and 1,000 things. It was just incredible how much time we spent on it. But we also looked at whether we should recommend any changes to the positions of sheriff and assessor and the clerk. And we did quite a bit of discussion on the sheriff and the clerk. There was nothing really to recommend about changing the way the office of the assessor works. So the sheriff, we had a really big turnout for that meeting. I think every sheriff in the state of New Mexico showed up for that one.
And they were all fully armed. It was quite a spectacle.
And you know, the reason we looked into these issues was because we were supposed to look at the charter with a fine-tooth comb, the whole charter. So we went through section by section and analyzed, should we continue to keep these things the way they are? And in the end, the Charter Review Committee recommended that we do. With the clerk, there were a number of issues related to that too, because the clerk's job has changed quite a bit. You know, voting is a lot different than it was back in the old days, and there's a lot of issues related to voting that have become much more complicated. And so we considered, should we have a full-time clerk who is, you know, well, just a way more involved clerk. We didn't end up going forward with that. But we definitely looked at it. We also looked at whether we should have districted versus at-large elections for council races. In the end, we decided that, like the school board, sometimes those are districted elections, and sometimes you don't have that many candidates stepping forward from a district. So we felt that the pool of candidates that might come forward to run for council, if those were districted, might not be very satisfactory to the community. But we did, you know, we talked a lot about this stuff. Sometimes I wonder why we talk so much about it. I think it's the typical Los Alamos thing. You've got to analyze everything. We looked at whether we should continue with partisan elections for council races. And in the end, after much discussion, we made a recommendation. It was not unanimous, but it almost was, to maintain our current partisan system. We talked about election scheduling. You know, should we have our council elections in the spring rather than the fall? And, you know, that's what happens in like Santa Fe and so forth. Their local commissioners or whatever are elected in the spring. But we thought in Los Alamos, the way it's working now works pretty well because your councilors are elected in your November elections, and that's typically when we have the best turnout. So those are some more of the things that we looked at. We also considered different ways of voting, maybe instant runoff voting, things like that. And the council really wasn't interested in that, in pursuing any of that. There was also some discussion of consolidating our municipal and magistrate court, and the council wasn't interested in doing that either.
I'll add something without substance. The entire report of the Charter Review Committee, which includes all the items that she talked about, is available at the county's website if you'd like to read more about it. So all the details are there.
Okay, we have a question. So since you decided to continue with partisan elections for county council, that made me wonder, since they say increasingly
the population seems to be registering as independent, or I guess it's declined to state is the fancy term. So I'm just curious, if somebody who was not part of either of the parties wanted to run, I assume they could? That's the question. Could they?
I can't off the top of my head recall the answer to that question, but I think we did talk about if we had a nonpartisan system, it would encourage more people who aren't affiliated with a political party. It might encourage them to consider running for office. But then there were also a lot of people who felt that, well, there were other members of the committee who felt that having major parties they serve an important function because they are the ones who basically recruit people to run for office. You know, sorry about that. I think Larry's microphone works a little better than mine does. Okay, so in the end, we found that the major parties really make a big contribution to getting people to run for the county offices. And this year, in the midterm election, is when we elect everybody. We elect 4 out of our 7 councilors, plus we have a lot of other races all the way down the ticket. The only one I think we don't have is the county clerk. And the Charter Review Committee felt that the major parties put a lot of effort into recruiting people to run for those offices. So in the long run, our recommendation was to continue with the system the way it is.
That last argument that Kyle mentioned is the one that was decisive in my mind. I consider that to be very important.
I know this is a question time, but I could, just to share some info that relates to Becky's question. Yes, of course, independents can run when you have partisan races. The timing for when they get on the ballot and the process is just a little different. I don't have it all ingrained in my brain, but my recollection is you have to get signatures, and it occurs sometime in June. So recall Mike Wismer ran for council as an independent, and there was a process that he could follow that allowed him to get on the ballot without a partisan primary. So not to mess things up, but I just thought that we should leave that.
Thank you. By the way,
No, I was just going to say you've made up for 2 important memory deficits sitting at this table. Thank you, Chris.
and it has been several years since we submitted our final report, so we have forgotten some of the details. But I would like to point out I did neglect to mention another topic that we talked about, and that was should we continue with having partisan boards and commissions? Because right now you need to have no more than a simple majority of any one party on boards and commissions. And so we looked into that, and we ended up. This one was not a unanimous vote, but the Charter Review Committee suggested to council that we retain the wording related to that topic.
Other questions?
I mentioned a moment ago the availability of the final report of the CRC to the council on the website, and I just wanted to add to that there were a number of dissenting opinions spelled out, very well worded dissenting opinions that will help you understand both sides of the issues if you're interested.
And they're in the appendices of the final report.
Well, if there, another question.
So you talked about instant runoff voting. What made you decide not to go forward with that?
What I remember about that is it's a very complicated subject.
And we did talk, Kathy Campbell, who has since moved out of Los Alamos, and Terry Goldman, they actually came to the Charter Review Committee and discussed some options for voting for council races that are used in other communities. And the papers they presented are included in one of our appendices, but there's proportional voting and there's a lot of different systems, and what we recommended was that this was an issue that should be more thoroughly studied and discussed in public. We didn't feel like it was maybe something we should study, but if the council were interested, that maybe they should appoint another committee specifically to go into this. And I kind of felt that some of this will eventually maybe come about because other communities are doing some of this, and as voting machines can do this much more readily, I think it might be more widely accepted, and I think there's a lot of benefits to it. Personally, I'm pretty impressed with some of the stuff that I learned as a part of this process about this. And so I'd be open to hearing more about it, but I don't think I'd be open to getting on another committee to go into another 4-year study, okay?
Yeah, if you're interested in raising that topic, the place to do it is with the council. I'm sure they'd be delighted with your views on the subject.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we have a second part of the program tonight. Beginning at 6:45, we'll have Jefferson Bird and Ben Ray Lujan will be here, two of the congressional candidates. And I hope that you will stick around. There's food, you can chat with your friends. And we're hoping for a good turnout for that second forum. I would like to thank Larry and Kyle for coming and explaining this ballot question to us. And as Kyle pointed out, there's a lot of information in the lobby and in the anteroom. And there's also more information on the county website. And finally, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Barbara Califf, President of the League of Women Voters, and the League's Voters Guide, which was distributed to all residences on October 1st, is also available in the lobby or at the library or on our website, lwvlosalamos.org. So thank you very much, and please stick around.